Guess who's back? Back again. Billy's back. Tell a friend. Yes, people, welcome back, Critical Vision family. Sorry for my absence, I've been unwell and incredibly busy. But as you can tell from the title, this is the second episode of my Miraculous book series. The series where I explain some aspects as to how I lost belief in Islam and came to realize that the Quran is not a miracle. This episode is about the nature of God as presented through the lens of the Quran. And you'll see why I've titled this episode, The Fickle God. And as always, if you're thin-skinned, easily offended, and can't deal with critical thinking, then I think you're on the wrong channel.
You're watching Critical Vision TV.
The earliest of Homo sapiens would have walked the earth, observing their physical surroundings, and wondered, initially with little understanding of natural phenomena, wondering how are mountains and cliffs formed, why does the sun set and rise, and why does the moon appear at night, how and why does rain occur, floods and earthquakes. Over time, as the intellect developed along with communities and communication, the gaps of the unknown were filled initially with the ideas of supernatural forces, gods, goddesses, and deities. Their ideas developing over time, shaped incredibly by their lack of understanding of natural laws. And so, gods and deities were viewed as the natural cause of natural phenomena. As a result of this, our ancient ancestors performed rituals, prayers, chants, and sacrifices, believing that they could satisfy gods and deities. They'd be granted a fair cycle of rainfall, bountiful crops, wealth, and healthy offspring. They sought the pleasure of these deities and also fought them as the driving force behind natural disasters, often thinking that their sins or their disobedience to these deities angered them, earned their wrath and their punishments. As naive and primitive as these ideas sound, the Quran to quite a degree reflects a similar understanding of the physical world. The Quran reflects the view that good comes from submission and obedience, and that disbelief and sin earns you punishment and disasters to strike. The Quran holds the view that Allah controls all things and is behind all natural phenomena. In Surah Mu'minun, verse 80, Allah gives and takes life as well as being the reason for night and day. In Surah Al-Qamar, it claims that Allah causes the rain and floods. In Surah Al-Ankabut, the Quran claims that Allah causes hurricanes and earthquakes as a consequence for men's sins. And in Surah Al-Imran, the Quran also claims that it is Allah who gives and takes sovereignty and leadership amongst peoples. So, there you have it. The Quran claims that Allah sees and knows everything, wills and controls everything, and causes everything. Every drought, earthquake, flood, and landslide is supposedly done by Allah. Every leader on earth appointed by Him. Every king, prince, president, and dictator. However, time has progressed, and we now understand the laws of nature. We understand freak weather. We understand the causes of tsunamis and earthquakes. We understand these laws, and we can accurately calculate and predict them. They require no supernatural intervention, and we can even harness them with things like wind turbines and hydroelectric dams. No need to abide by ancient laws, perform prayers, rituals, or sacrifices. We see no evidence of abiding by the Sharia, Islamic law, fasting, and praying 5 times a day as having any influence over the laws of nature. We can clearly see today that the laws of nature affect all, regardless of belief or disbelief. But the Quran holds the view that Allah causes the laws of nature to strike with extreme prejudice. Have they not seen how many generations we destroyed before them? We destroyed them for their sins, and brought forth after them a generation of others. They denied our signs, so Allah sees them for their sins, and Allah is severe in penalty. Not a single city which we destroyed believed before them, so will they believe? So the Quran presents the idea that control of the elements is a sign of divine power and authority, as well as it being a means of evidence and punishment for disbelief. During the time of Muhammad, the Arabs would have become familiar with the tales of the Quran, the miracles and the disasters. And quite fairly so, they asked Muhammad to produce a sign or miracle that he is truthful and genuinely sent by the God of Abraham. As a result, a verse was revealed to suffice their demands. Surah Al-Nahl, verse 79. Do they not see the birds controlled in the atmosphere of the sky? None holds them up except Allah. Indeed, in that are signs for a people who believe. I'm sorry, but look at the birds. This is supposed to be evidence from the God of Abraham. They're expecting life to be given to the dead, the seas to part, and mountains to be raised over towns. And what do they get? Look at the birds. Not even any consideration of aerodynamics or millions of years of evolution, just Allah holds them up. I mean, to be impressed by that, you'd have to be a barely literate desert dweller of the 7th century. But the Quran claims to be authored by an all-knowing God who controls and wills all things. Why would he will for us to be in a place and time where we have superior knowledge than him? Seriously, the average primary school child has more knowledge on these matters than the supposedly all-knowing Allah. In Surah Al-An'am, Allah challenges us to travel the earth and see the fates of those who didn't believe. But in reality, people live, die, suffer and thrive regardless of whom they pray to, if they pray at all. Allah is effectively asking us to verify evidence, whilst having left no evidence whatsoever. How on earth are you supposed to know who was destroyed by divine prejudice, or just regular events? Where is this evidence that the Quran claims to be so obvious? In addition, societies which are not believing in Islam often have much better standards of living, wealth, education, healthcare and technology. But the Quran constantly claims that Allah destroyed people for disbelief and will continue destroying people for disbelief. If we look here, the Quran tells us that for our disbelief, Allah will send us a storm of stones, send hurricanes to us, and cause the earth to swallow us. I'm quite open about having lost belief in Islam. I'm here talking about it to you on YouTube right now. And quite clearly, I haven't been swallowed by the earth, affected by hurricanes, or had stones rain down on me. The reality is that natural disasters don't occur by divine prejudice, and they affect a whole variety of people, regardless of what they believe. Some Muslims claimed on social media that the recent wildfires in the US were Allah's punishment for foreign policy and supporting the State of Israel. So why does Allah constantly flood Muslim-majority Bangladesh? Somalia is nearly 100% Muslim, and they suffer some of the world's worst food shortages and constant droughts. Afghanistan has gone the whole 9 yards in terms of their Islamic belief, the Taliban proudly boasting of its implementation of Islamic laws, the Sharia. But that didn't protect them from a recent devastating earthquake. When it comes to natural disasters, the innocent and the poor suffer the most, and quite commonly, Muslim nations. Believing nations. Despite all the real-world observable evidence to the contrary of the Quran's claims, the Quran is continuous in its dishing out of its empty threats. Then do those who have planned evil deeds feel secure that Allah will not cause the earth to swallow them, or that the punishment will not come upon them from where they do not perceive? Have these threats really been carried through? If it's really from God, does he actually mean what he says? When you weigh up the evidence and think about it critically, they are just primitive and empty threats. All these threats from the Quran, no evidence for them. Just empty claims and empty threats. If you're a Muslim and you're watching this, I would implore you to ask this question. Do all these baseless claims and empty threats really come across as the words of an all-merciful, all-knowing, and all-wise creator? It seems to me that faith in Islam is purely dependent on fear. Is it really free will? Or is it just coercion and manipulation of human vulnerability? No elegance, no intellectual arguments, just baseless claims, aggression and bullying. And if it's so obviously true as the Quran claims it to be, then why all the constant empty threats? If you're a Muslim and you're watching this, ask yourself, what would the Quran be without all the violent empty threats? It would be a poetic book of baseless claims, more baseless claims, a means test which proves nothing, followed by more baseless claims. I confessed in my last video that I am agnostic about God, but I reject all religions. However, people who believe in religion often talk about a relationship with God. And if you're Muslim watching this, I have some bad news. If Islam is your mechanism for having a relationship with God, then you're in an abusive relationship. You are pressured to worship an imaginary friend who lies to you, makes baseless claims, and constantly demonstrates aggression and violent thoughts towards you. I don't hate you or your religion. I pity you. And as people in abusive relationships often do, they'll ignore all the evidence around them and keep running back to their abuser. The Quran depicts a world of miracles, jinns, and divine intervention, and orders us to travel the earth and see the evidence for ourselves. Yet we see no evidence. We only see evidence to the contrary. The Quran also further claims that Allah does not change his ways, means, or methods. So is he still doing these miracles and causing natural disasters specifically for disbelief? Because it doesn't look it. Did he take retirement conveniently in time for the age of cameras, the internet and communications? Did the development of the scientific method magically make him switch his methods? Why would he create a universe and existence where all of his signs and evidence is concealed, then angrily threaten people for not just blindly believing his baseless claims? A supposedly all-knowing and all-merciful God who failed to mention boiling water kills bacteria and could have saved countless lives, but did mention boiling water as a means of torturing people for all of eternity. A supposedly all-powerful and all-merciful God who failed to intervene in the face of countless genocides, but could intervene for a brick cube building in the middle of the desert full of idols by sending an army of birds. A supposedly all-wise, all-knowing, and all-merciful God who spoke of jinns constructing grand palaces for Solomon, but left no archaeological evidence whatsoever and threatens to burn you for all of eternity for not blindly believing it. Overall, the Quran depicts God as an angry being, with an understanding of the earth and nature that's factually wrong and incredibly primitive. The Quran presents God as someone who constantly makes baseless claims and backs them with a means test which bears no substance, and then makes continuous, violent, empty threats. I make these videos to address the multiple reasons I lost belief in Islam. And the Islamic concept of God is just one of many. I often get asked by Muslims why I no longer believe in Islam. I'd ask them to ponder over what I've mentioned and ask themselves, why do they actually believe in it? I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'm genuinely sorry about the long wait for it. I will continue to make videos, and if you did enjoy it, please like and share. It would be deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Critical Vision TV.